Hello and welcome. I'm Monika Plucińska. I'm from Uniwersytet of Szczecin and a part of Student Society of Celtologii. And I'm going to talk about the unknown history of Great Hunger and the message, the Irish message about it. First of all, I will tell you what in nutshell was the Great Hunger. Then I will try to tell you about the past and background in which it happened, and why the potato was so important in the history of Great Hunger. Then I will tell you about the Great Hunger itself and the fallout. The short introduction. What was the Great Hunger? The people are so poor that they are ready to eat one another. This is what a person told during the time of Great Hunger. So I think it's a very important to hear a lot about what Irish people and what people who observed what happened in the time of Great Hunger had to tell. And these are the exact words that a person used to describe what they saw. What was the Great Hunger? It happened in Ireland in the middle of the 19th century. It was connected with potato disease. And what is, I would say, interesting in a way, the names and the dates are really discussed until this day. And now the past and background. I will talk about the history, a little bit of history of Irish nation. A lot, I think it's a lot about society, and a bit of about politics, which led to the tragedy. So, what are the most important issues in Irish history that made the background, the foundations for what happened in 19th century? So, the potato arrived to England around the end of 16th century. It wasn't very popular at first. But the whole century of military conflicts, so the Tudors' conquest of Ireland, then some rebellions in Ireland, and then reconquest by Cromwell, made it more popular. Then in 1801, by the Acts of Union, Ireland became a part of the United Kingdom. So it was... It officially became part of a larger country. Then in 18th century, there was the first Great Famine. It's called Irish Famine, and it happened during the very, very long and very frozy winter. And what shaped the background for the Great Hunger was the English attitude towards Irish people, which wasn't really good. English people didn't like Irish people, and they thought about them that they are something less than they are. Most of the Irish people were not only poor but land dependent. They were living from what they grew. Some of them were so-called courtiers, so they were landless people who rented parts of land to have some place to live and to grow their food. The housing conditions were very poor, and people who couldn't pay rent were evicted. In the time when Great Hunger happened, 2/5 of Irish society were potato dependent and had to pay a very high rents for the parts of land which were used to plant potatoes, because there was such law in Ireland in the time of Great Hunger. To be more specific about Irishmen's living conditions, I would say that they were able to earn around 8 pennies per day. So it would make around 3 pence nowadays. They were able to work around 100 days a year, and it's made around £8 of yearly income for a family. And the living costs we can estimate as around £8 also. So if they needed anything extra, anything for themselves, like clothes, like medicine, to buy something new for the house or anything, they had to find some means to earn it elsewhere. So why the potato? Why potato was so important in the history of Irish of the famine in Ireland? First of all, I will talk about history of the potato in Ireland, then how Ireland became potato dependent and why, and what was the disease that happened in those times in the world. The potato first came to Ireland in the end of 16th century. In those times, in 16th century, the society of Ireland was eating mostly oatmeal and milk or some meat. And during the wars, during the time after wars, there were a lot of periods of hunger, and the potato became a very attractive source of energy, a source of food. So they started to grow it more and more. Also, it was encouraged by the state to grow potatoes. And as the potatoes were very easy to grow in the mild and wet climate of Ireland, and it was very easy to prepare and store, people started to grow it more and more, and they started to replace oatmeal and other cereals by potatoes in their diet. And in the 19th century, when the Great Hunger came, as I've already said, 2/5 of people were potato dependent. So what actually happened to the potatoes was the fungus, potato blight, which came from Boston in USA, and in the mild, wet climate of Ireland, which was very good for growing potatoes, the fungus could very easily spread and grow also. And the moment when the fungus was first seen in Ireland was the August of 1845. So we are in the middle of the year 1845. The potato blight came to Ireland, and now the Great Hunger starts. I will talk about the history of the Great Hunger, and I will show you some people's testimonies. They will be said or written by people from the island, but also from people who traveled through Ireland and saw what happened and tried to reach the world, the Irishmen, I believe, with the message about the hunger which happened in Ireland. When the fungus came to Ireland and was there actively, 3 out of 4 crops failed, and it was between 1845 and 1849. People died not only because of hunger, but also because of this so-called road disease, which were dysentery, typhus, and cholera. So as English didn't stop to export Irish food for trade purposes, Irishmen didn't have enough food for themselves from other sources than that potato. In these conditions, some of Englishmen and Irishmen who had food tried to organize some so-called outdoor relief. So it was soup kitchens and outdoor work to earn money or get food. But although all the help, corpses could be found everywhere. What also happened during the Great Hunger were evictions. When people didn't have enough food to eat, they hadn't had enough energy to work. So they hadn't have enough money to pay their rent. So they were so they were becoming homeless. They were evicted. They couldn't be also taken by other family members to their home because there was a law which said that the family who would take in the evicted people would be evicted too. So they lived in the bog holes and ditches made in literally bogs and out of some parts of their houses. Next, you can see there is a testimony of a person who saw something like that happen. One day I was taken to the scene of an eviction. There were some dozen houses were to be pulled down and the people evicted. The sheriff, a strong body of police, and the crowbar brigade were present. At a signal from the sheriff, the work began. The miserable inmates were dragged out, the thatched roofs were torn down, and the earthen walls battered in by crowbars. The screaming women, the half-naked children, the paralyzed grandmother, and the tottering grandfather were hauled out. So now I will show you some testimonies from people who saw what happened during the Great Hunger. And first, we have a picture from the Truth Behind the Irish Famine by Jerry Manville. It's a book. It's a very, very interesting book with very many testimonies in it. And the picture has a text under it, which says, "This bed was made in the bog, within a few yards of the sea, but sheltered from its spray by a bank under which a narrow place had been dug, which partly covered him." And it's a testimony from an American philanthropist who saw everything in 1847. Other testimony, also from the same book, and this time from Sidney Osborne, an English travel writer, says also about some kind of shelter made by Irish people. On our journey, we had ample opportunity of seeing to what shifts the peasantry will resort before they will face the Union House after they have been evicted and seen their homes tumbled. Their usual practice is, with the thatch and some of the roof stick, to build up a dwelling called a scalping. The most common form of this piece of the dwelling is what I suppose an Englishman would call the lean-to, and it was from 1849. I have also a letter from Mary Rush, who wrote to her parents in Canada, so parents who had an opportunity to travel, to migrate from Ireland to North America, to find some better place, and she writes about her misery in the country. I have also some testimonies from the family who heard about what happened in Ireland from their family who lived the Great Hunger and saw what happened. This is from the book by another writer, and this testimony is from Richard Delaney, and it says, "When a person in the house had got fever, the people of the house would hide it from the neighbors. If the neighbors suspected there was any fever in the house, they used steal up to the house at night time and put an onion on the window sill. They would split the onion in two. If the onion turned green, they would know that there was fever in that particular house, and they would avoid it." Yet another testimony, this time by Mrs. Lennox. "People became ill with sickness like cholera. Nobody entered the affected house. When death occurred in a house, a tar pot was set outside the door. When this appeared, a cart came and took the remains away for burial. Holes were dug for graves and numbers buried together. I told you already about some relief schemes made possible by very many different individuals. And now I will tell you what specifically were relief schemes. So first of all, we have travellian relief schemes, workhouses, and some private means with which some landlords, for example, and other rich people tried to help Irishmen survive. So first of all, travellian relief schemes. Travellian was an English clerk who tried to, let's say, help Irish people. The thing which happened was that people had to go for their food very far away from their houses. Only those who were able to work and walk would get help, and the poorest got the relief only if they gave up all their belongings. So it was sometimes about letting their house to be taken away from them or something like that. We also have messages about some workhouses, so places where people could get work and also food and be paid for their work. The workhouses were established long before the Irish famine, but the diet, the meals given to people during the Great Hunger changed. As you can see, people before the Great Hunger got around 2,100 to 2,300 calories a day. So it was barely sufficient for a person who worked hard in the workhouse. But when the Great Hunger began, the calories were cut to around 1,000. So it was not enough even for a person who doesn't work physically, and so it was very hard to survive out of this diet. There were also some kind of private visions of landlords how to help people. So here we have a soup made by a French chef of the Reform Club in London. And it consists of a part of beef leg and a lot of water, some fat, some vegetables, some of flour, some pear barley, and some sugar. As I estimated, the whole soup had around 2,500 calories and it weighted around 9 kilograms. So I thought that a quite good portion would be a 1 kilogram portion of the soup, but when I calculated it, it had only approximately 300 calories. There was also a relief scheme which is called now Roads to Nowhere or Famine Roads. This is what happened, what is the result of this scheme. So people had to walk really far away for a very, very hard labor, and it was very low paid, because it was like around 10 pennies a day, and it gave only one meal for a family of 6. Although it was so low paid work, numbers of workers increased quickly during the Irish famine because people were searching for any place they could get some food and some money, and from 30,000 workers in September of 1846, it increased to 700,000 of workers in March in 1847. Now I will tell you about the fallout of the Great Hunger. So what followed the whole thing? So the deaths, emigration, and nationalism. people estimate that around 1 million of Irishmen died during the Great Hunger, and it was around 15% of the population. The deaths occurred in southwest Ulster, and of course they weren't caused only by the hunger itself, but also the diseases that were related to the hunger. Also, around 1 million people emigrated from Ireland, mostly to United States, to Canada, to Australia. And the ships that traveled with Irishmen were called coffin ships because people were so weak that many of them died during the travel. The hunger also was one of the reasons that the new big rebirth of nationalism happened. So there was a society which started to exist and was called Young Ireland. There was a newspaper called The Nation, which wrote in the spirit of nationalism, and there was also a late Romanticism poet from Ireland called James Clarence Mangan, who wrote a lot about not only the Great Hunger, but about all topics related to being an Irishman and the whole thing of nationalism, of Irish nationalism. So now I will tell you about some simple facts about the Great Hunger. So the names and the dates. I've told you before that there are some problems with those issues, and now I will tell you why. So we will start with the names. Some of the names are neutral and are used mostly by historians to talk and write about Irish famine. So these are Great Famine, Great Hunger, and Famine, and I used most of them to describe what happened. But there are also two names which I'm aware of, which are used by either Irish people and English people. So there is Irish genocide, and it's starting to be a official name for what happened during the hunger, and it's used mostly by Irish people to talk about what happened to them, because they feel that it's not only hunger, it's not only potato, it's also the Englishmen to be blamed for what happens to them. And the name which I feel is mostly used by English people is Irish potato famine, because it gives all the blame for the what happened to the potato, and I would say to Irish people also, because it's. And now the dates. As nobody argues that what happened started in 1845, there are a lot of theories when the Great Hunger actually ended. Most of the sources would tell you that it ended in 1849, so when the potato blight was extinguished. But more and more sources nowadays start to tell that it was either 1851 or 1852. And why is that so? I think that it's because some more and more Irish sources start to tell when people actually stopped to starve. Because if the crops failed until 1849, it is obvious that people starved even after the potato blight ended. So the ending date of the Great Hunger depends on what source you will look into. If it's an Irish source, it will give you a longer date, a further date, and if it's a English source, it would give you the date of 1849 probably. So now we got to the last part of my presentation, which is about the Great Hunger in culture. So how it was preserved, how it was depicted in the movies, poems, in literature, and whatsoever. I will start with a poem by Mangan, so a poet who lived in 19th century. And it's about the Great Hunger, and it's depicted in a way that no one who doesn't know the story would notice that it's about the Great Hunger, because the place of the action of the poem is in the Siberia, and it's influenced by a German poem about Polish soldiers who were taken to Siberia for death and starvation. In Siberia's wastes the ice wind's breath, wounded like the toothed steel, lost Siberia doth reveal only blight and death. Blight and death alone, no summer shines, night is interblent with day. In Siberia's wastes away the blood blackens, the heart pines. Therefore, in those wastes none curse the Tsar. Each man's tongue is cloven by the north blast that heweth night with sharp scimitar. We also have a song written in 1979 by Pete St. John, and it's called The Fields of Athenry. It tells a story of a man thrown to jail for stealing some bread, and the most popular, the most known moment when Irish people sang it as some kind of unofficial anthem they use while sport events was the Euro 2012, when Irish team supporters started to sing the song at the very end of the game between Irish team and the team from Spain. Now I will tell you about a contemporary book and movie which doesn't really talk about the Great Hunger itself, but its action takes place just after the Great Hunger, and it's called The Wonder. The novel was written by Emma Donoghue, an Irish-Canadian writer, and the movie you can watch on Netflix. And it tells a story of an Irish girl who is said to be fed manna from heaven, and all Irish people believe that it's a miracle, and an English nurse is sent to investigate this miracle, if it's true or it's not true. And it really shows how the country looked like around 10 years after the Great Hunger ended. I believe that I told you a lot about the Great Hunger in Ireland, and that you were able to hear a lot of testimonies from Irish people, from travelers who saw what happened. And now I say thank you for your attention, and if you want to learn more about the Great Hunger, I will show you the sources which I used. You can write to me to ask about some more books or articles and other sources you can learn from about the Irish famine. And thank you. I wish you a nice evening. Bye.